What's up, everybody? Evan here for Grips.com, continuing with Project Get Me Stacking. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the World Series of Poker. And for those of you who are following on Facebook, I know you saw the post. It's right there. Save the dates, May 29th to July 26th. Get them circled on your calendar because the World Series of Poker is going down. And whether or not you're going to play or you're just a big poker fan like myself, Poker News is going to have tons of coverage, tons of news, tons of updates, and tons of strategy stuff going on. So it's a really big time for poker coming up, and I hope you guys are as excited about it as I am. If you happen to be going down to the World Series of Poker at any point, send me an email. Let me know what event you're playing. And if you go deep, maybe I can be there to rail you. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to be there, but I'm definitely going to be there before the main. And if you are a Grips subscriber, I'd love to meet you down there. So just hit me up via email. Let me know what you're playing, and maybe I'll run into you, grab a drink or something. Anyway, today's question is about strategy for the World Series of Poker. So let's just get right into it. Dear Evan, just wanted to give you some props on your videos. I've been playing poker and watching YouTube videos about poker since 2003, and I have to say that your videos are the best mix of learning and entertainment that I've found among any of the free videos, and even most of the paid ones. Wow. Good for me, I guess. One question. I'm going to be playing a $1,500 no-limit World Series of Poker event this summer. Would you say that the strategies you outlined in your 180-man sit-and-go videos would hold pretty true in this event as well? Any major differences? Thanks, man. Keep up the great work, and hope to meet you at the table sometimes. Justin, the Prodigy, Mick Williams. And I'm glad that I got this question because a lot of people go down to the World Series of Poker. They're all excited. They're going to play the first World Series of Poker event, and they don't really know what to expect. And you know, they come in all confident because they've been crushing their home game, and they get there and they're like, holy shit. There are so many people in this room. There are so many pros here, so many stars. I'm all like overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And it's really easy to get taken off your game. And the worst time, by far the worst time you can ever get taken off your game is right before you play, you know, one of your biggest sessions or one of your biggest events of the year. So it's very important to be mentally prepared for the World Series of Poker, including these side events. And fortunately, I've played in my fair share of them over the past few years. So I do have some insight I can definitely offer in terms of these events. Now, in terms of where they differ from you know, your local $100 tournament or your local $1,000 tournament or an online 180-man or 3,000-person tournament, is it's really the structure. And you got to pay a lot of attention to the structure of the tournament. How many chips do you get in terms of blinds? Because what are the starting levels for the blinds? How quickly do the blind levels go up? Do they skip any blind levels? So how like smooth is the progression of the blind levels? And how many players do you have to deal with? And what percentage of the field is paid? And then how steep is the payout structure? How much of the money is up top? And you know, is a min cash double your money? Is a min cash 1.5 times your money? Is a min cash your money back? These things are really important to think about because your general play from tournament to tournament is never going to be too different unless the structure is drastically different. So it's really the structure that determines how much you'll need to adjust your strategy from playing, you know, a solid patient to an aggressive, let's gamble and accumulate chips kind of strategy. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about these 1,500 side events because, hey, could be your shot to win a World Series of Poker bracelet, and that would be pretty cool. So, personal development, since anyone who's a poker player, you know, probably aspires to play one of these things, and it's a good experience to play in a World Series of Poker tournament, if nothing else than to be able to tell your grandkids when you're doing hanging out on your rocking chair and older, to be able to tell them that you played in the World Series of Poker. And these $1,500 events, I think, are a decent spot. The $1,000 events, you really don't get many chips and it's like a hyper crapshoot. The 1500s, you get a little bit more play, and it's definitely worth the extra 500 bucks if you can put them together. So in a 1500, you're going to start with 6,000 chips. If I remember correct, you're going to get 8 greens, 8 blacks, 1,000. Let's see, probably four blues and 3 yellows, or 2 blues and 4 yellows. It's not going to feel like you have a lot of chips. You're going to feel like you have a kind of short stack, but recognize you do have 6,000 starting chips, and the blinds start at 25.50. So you have a little over 100 big blinds, and they may have changed the structure to be 25-25. Either way, you do have a decent stack at the start, even though it doesn't feel like you have very many chips. So don't get all small man syndrome because you have a short stack. You have chips. The field size is massive. You're dealing with over 3,000 people, upwards of like 6,000 in some of these events. Now they have re-entries. Who knows how big they're going to get. But the point is, you're going to have to get a lot of chips to win this thing, but the payoff's worth it. First prize in these 1,500 events is 600K. Even some of them are even bigger. And if you can be lucky and run good and play well, you can make a lot of money in these events. So the first tip I can give for these events is try to play your best, because that's all you can do, and just hope you get lucky. When you're going up against 3,000 people, it doesn't matter how good you are at poker. Your odds are still, at best, probably going to be like 1,000 to 1. You don't have enough chips and long enough blind levels to exercise a huge skill advantage, and you're up against a lot of people. So recognize that it's not like it's a sure thing. It's not like if you're a top tier player, you're like a 50 to 1 shot. It still is a long shot. So odds are you aren't going to win, but if you play your best and stay positive the whole time, you'll have a better shot at winning. You should be focused on, when you go into one of these events, you shouldn't be focused on winning the thing. Obviously, that should be in the back of your mind, and that should be a goal. You should just focus on playing well and enjoying the experience for what it is, because you don't know when you'll be back, and the more fun you can have out of the experience, the more value you get from it, regardless of the outcome. Also, if you're feeling good, you're more likely to be playing well and more likely to get good results and to be able to capitalize on getting good cards. Number 2, definitely study the MTT Strategy Guide. I just reviewed it before I made this video, and pretty much all the information in there is applicable to these tournaments, especially that on live play. There's nothing I can say in a 15-minute video that's going to cover what that multi-part strategy guide can, so please study up on that. All the techniques are definitely applicable and relevant. Number 3, definitely show up on time. In these tournaments, the early stages only last about 4 hours, in my opinion. Once you get to the 75, 150, 100, 200 level, you're already dealing with like 30 blind stacks. And then the antes kick in, and you get very short very fast. So you want to show up on time to actually get to play some early stage play and get to know a little bit about your opponents before you get into that aggressive, open, 3-betty, reshovey kind of part of the tournament, where knowing who's playing tight and knowing who's willing to give a lot of action is very important to determining the optimal strategy for playing in these events. So definitely show up on time and make sure you get a good night's rest before, because you're in for a long day. You could be playing 8 to 10 hours of poker, and if your nerves are there and your adrenaline's going, you probably aren't going to be that hungry. So it's going to be a draining day that you want to be ready for. In a perfect world, you get 30 minutes of exercise before you play, but hey, we're not going to ask you to do everything. Number 4, you got to be willing to gamble. You have to get through 1 million players. You're going to need a lot of chips to get anything done in these tournaments. Short stacking your way and hoping to pick up big pairs when you need them at the right time is just not the strategy to go for. If you get a good looking hand, unless you're up against a super nit, you probably want to go for the gamble. Worst case, you get knocked out. You got to win flips in these things. You got to win 60-40s. You got to win 70-30s. Hell, you probably have to suck out a couple times with the worst hand to win them. So be willing to gamble. Don't be afraid. You know, even if it's something that's built up and you're like, man, I only get to play this tournament once. This is my big thing. I don't want to go out in the first 15 minutes. If it's a really good spot, you got to take it, because it's not about how long you can last in the tournament. It's how much of a shot can you give yourself at winning? What's the best way to give yourself a shot at winning the tournament or making a deep run, and, you know, being able to put together a story you can tell your mates when you get home. Give them a story worth telling. You don't want to say, you know, I sat there for 6 hours and then I finally got ace king when I was down to a quarter of my starting stack and I got 3 out of it. No. You want to tell your mates about how you built up a big stack and how you made it to day 3, maybe how you even final tabled that thing. And the only way to be able to do that is to be willing to gamble and to get in there and give some action. These tournaments have a really fast structure early, which is why I encourage that gambling, but things do slow down as you get deeper in the tournament. So if you can build a stack to withstand like the early rush of the speedy blind levels at first and the quick bust outs, because there's just so many people and the stacks just aren't that big at the start, uh, then you can capitalize on it later. When you make day 2 or even day 3 in these things, the tournament structure is a lot smoother and you do get more play. So don't get overwhelmed in the beginning, as long as you're picking your spots well. If you can, you know, get a couple of doubles in the first few levels, you'll be doing good. And if you manage to get your starting stack up to like 20K or 30K, you know, you need to value that, because it's not easy to get your stack up that big and you don't want to get reckless with it. Once you get to a comfortable stack in the early stages, really start being a little more selective about picking your spots. You've gotten some of the gambling out of the way. Now it's time to take advantage of the luxury of having chips. Um, as things get slower, you can just try to make a couple of steals per round, progress your way through the tournament. You don't need to get too crazy, unless, of course, you set up a dynamic with someone or someone's just a sicko gambler and, well, they're trying to give it away. Don't shy away from a big pot if you think it's a really good spot, but recognize that the tournament structure progressively gets better the farther you get. Now, the best way to get chips, we know, is getting them from people who are trying to give them away. So if you have like a couple of pros on your table, or players who look like they really know what they're doing, you don't want to go out of your way to play pots with them. If a situation comes up that dictates you should get involved with them, you're going to know it and you're going to recognize it, but your focus should be trying to play pots with the 3 or 4 weakest players on the table. They're going to be the easiest ones to get chips from, and they're only going to be in the tournament so long before they give their chips away. This is why in the early stage you want to show up on time to get those reads, and you want to be willing to gamble. You know, you want to get involved with these weaker players while they still have chips to give. Remember, once those weak players have given away their chips, they might be in the hands of a strong player. It's going to be really hard to get those chips afterwards. So while they're, you know, up for the taking, you want to give yourself the best shot at getting them. Likewise, if you manage to build a stack and you get deep in the tournament and there's another player with a big stack who happens to be bad, oh man, just be willing to get involved with that player, because it will pay huge dividends if you can, you know, take them out and acquire a super stack, which is going to get you a lot of fear equity from your opponents and allow you to kind of cruise through later days. Finally, when the antes kick in, you got to get in there. We talk about this in the MTT Strategy Guide, but it's even more so important to mention in a live tournament, because the antes are pretty significant, especially in the early stages, and they are pretty big. And the players who are willing to raise more pots and play more pots are going to get rewarded. So as long as you're confident in your abilities and you're not attacking when there's either a tough player in the blind who's going to defend a lot or a tough player on the button who's going to be defending his position a lot, then you will get rewarded for being in there when the antes kick in. Don't be afraid to loosen up your raising standards a little bit. Finally, the biggest thing, the most profitable thing you can do in a World Series event, especially these smaller ones, is abuse the bubbles. And you'll notice I said bubbles, not bubble. We all know about the money bubble. And we all know about the final table bubble. But in these tournaments, since it's such a major event for a lot of players, they want to make it to the first break. A lot of them want to make it to day 2. Some players will be happy if they make it to dinner break. And these create bubbles in and of themselves. So if chat someone up and hear that they're in town for this one tournament and, they plan their whole weekend around it, well, you probably got a bubble going into dinner that guy doesn't want to go out before. Likewise, always after dinner, before the start of the next days, like those last couple of levels, or when they announce that there are 5 or 6 hands left in the night, that's definitely a bubble that you want to be taking advantage of. Because blinds are getting bigger at dinner and at the end of the day, much bigger than they are at the start of the day, and they're also the easiest chips to get. I would say in the starting like hour, people are going to be playing pretty tight, and then at the end of the day, people are going to be playing pretty tight. So again, if you manage to build chips in the early stages, then after dinner and go into the end of day 1 and then go into the end of day 2, these are spots where you can really capitalize, and the value of having chips is so much more. So yeah, that's about it for presentation, but abuse all of the bubbles. It's not just the money bubble and the final table bubble. There are all sorts of bubbles throughout the tournament that you might not have thought about, but hey, now you know about it. And the main thing when you go to play the World Series of Poker is have fun. You're going down to Las Vegas. It's Sin City. There's so much fun stuff to do. I mean, yeah, there's lots of fun stuff to do. Hopefully you're there with some friends. Enjoy the experience. Take it all in. Don't put too much pressure on yourself about the tournament. If you run good in the tournament and you make a deep run, fantastic. Maybe you'll make some money. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, and that was the most likely result. Don't let it ruin your weekend or your week or your stay in Vegas. Or if you're planning to play a few events, don't get all upset because you lost the first one or you lost the second one. That's going to happen pretty often. It's important you keep your head on straight and focus so that you can perform in the next events. I know from playing like a full schedule before that if you let yourself get upset at losing the first few tournaments, it's just going to snowball and you're going to set yourself up to lose the rest. So it's really important to ignore what happened in the tournament before and remember that the new one, hey, it's a fresh start. And it's a chance for a lot of money, and regardless, it's a chance at a lot of fun. Now, for anyone who can make it to the World Series of Poker, but maybe you still have a $1,500 event coming up, all this information is still pretty much relevant and applicable. The only thing that's going to change is the structure. Generally, smaller field main events that have like 300 to 500 to 1,000 players are going to be a better structure. They're going to have longer blind levels and fewer players to get through. A smaller field size means the pressure to accumulate chips early isn't as strong as it is in a World Series event. So you can play a little bit slower in a main event like a World Series of Poker circuit final or something like that. But hey, if you guys have tournaments coming up, post them in the comments. Let me know if you can put the starting chips and the blind structure and the expected field size. Maybe we can work out some more specific strategies and adjustments you guys can implement to give yourself the best shot at winning. I hope you found this video insightful and informative, and that it helps anyone this summer who's going down to play a World Series of Poker event. Again, let me know if you're going to be down there, because I'm definitely going to be down there, and it'd be cool to meet some fellow gripsters. If you have any questions and you would like a video response made, please send them to evan@grips.com with the subject line "Get Me Stack," and then hopefully I can help you get them stacking. And finally, if you're enjoying the videos, you're finding them helpful to your game, you want to see some more, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I will keep the good stuff coming. That's going to wrap it up. See you guys in Vegas. It's been Evan for Grips.com. Saying peace.